Good morning, guys. Happy Tuesday. I really loved seeing some of you guys this morning in our Zoom conference. And for those of you that I didn't see, I hope that you'll join at 1 o'clock, between 1 and 3 today. So I wanted to pick up where we left off on Sink or Swim. And we finished chapter 10 on Friday. And Colton, who's going under the name Danny, Colton and his friend Woody, they're down at a sub chaser school in Miami, and it's not easy work for them. And of course, Woody's always had a hard time between his left and his right. So he was also having a hard time understanding which side was starboard and which side was port. Port is actually the left side and starboard's actually the right. So he disappears and he goes and gets them tattooed on his arms. So now he knows which side is which. So we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're on chapter 11. My next paycheck I also cashed and mailed to Mama, along with another letter telling her I was good and that I was praying for Danny and all of them. I'd written before from Great Lakes, but I couldn't really tell her anything else, so I figured the same was better than nothing. The day I got the check was my 13th birthday, so at least I wasn't as underage as I used to be. I kept $1 out of my paycheck to treat myself to a burger and a Coke at the commissary, which was kind of a general store they had on base, and another $1 so I could treat Woody too, since he was the closest thing I had to a best friend in the Navy. He kept pestering me about why I was being so generous and what was the big occasion. I ain't never seen you spend even a nickel before, he said as we walked over to the commissary. It was another Sunday. We only had 2 weeks left at the Subchaser Training Center, 2 weeks left in Miami. Heck, I don't even have a nickel left out of my paychecks, he added. I shrugged. I send mine home. They need it a lot more than I do. Yeah, I guess I ought to be doing that too, Woody said. Only I ain't ever got any money of my own my whole life. Even when I was cropping tobacco, my mom took it all from me. She said I owed it for rent. For rent? I asked. That didn't make any sense. Nobody paid rent to stay in their own bedroom at their own house. Apparently Woody did. My dad left us when I was little and we ain't seen him since. He wasn't good for nothing anyway. So my mom, seems like she always had one boyfriend or another around, not much time for us kids. She was working and all too. She said we had to work if we were going to stay in the house. So that's what we did, from the time we couldn't hardly even walk. Sorry, I said, that sounds rough. I told him I'd lost my dad too, but he didn't leave us, I quickly added. I mean, not on purpose. What happened? It was Woody's turn to ask questions. We were almost at the commissary, but stopped to finish the conversation. There was a storm, and he didn't make it back to the island in time. He'd been out fishing. They said the waves got to 30 feet. They never found the boat or any of the men. But I knew in my heart that however it happened, Dad would have been the one doing everything he could to try to save the others. I paused for a minute because I was getting kind of choked up, then swallowed hard and told Woody the rest of the story. How after the official search ended, Mama wouldn't give up, and day after day for probably 2 weeks, she took me and Danny out in the skiff to look for any signs of Dad's boat. Nobody had the heart to tell her there was no point in it. Nobody on the island said much of anything after, except how sorry they were about Dad. It was like everybody had agreed to just pretend Mama wasn't doing what she was doing. The way Danny had explained it to me was that Mama wasn't ready to let Dad go just yet, and us going out to search for him was her working up to the idea that he was gone forever and that he wasn't coming back. Working up to the idea that we were going to have to be a family without him. Finally, the last day we went out, Mama had turned the boat around after just an hour. She didn't say anything at first, didn't speak at all until we made it back to the island and docked the boat. Then she hugged Danny and me, sighed, and said, "I am sure going to miss him." Danny had whispered too. Me too. I hadn't said anything. I hated every second we were out on the ocean looking, but now that Mama had let us know she was done, I realized I wasn't ready to let go. I was too little to take the boat out, so every day for a month I'd climb the highest dune on the island with a pair of binoculars. That's how I searched for Dad. Of course, he never did come back home. Woody and I sat quietly for a while after I told him my story. We'd both been through a lot of sadness about our dads, and sometimes there just wasn't much to say. I was the one who finally broke the silence. "Anyway, it's my birthday today," I told Woody. "So we're celebrating." "Whoa!" Woody exclaimed, happy to change the subject, of course. "How old are you? 18? That ain't possible young as you look. You don't even shave yet." He grabbed me around the neck and rubbed his knuckles hard on my scalp. With my navy buzz cut, I didn't have any hair for protection, so it burned, and I howled in pain. "Happy birthday, Danny," Woody shouted. And then, as we stepped into the commissary, he shouted to everybody who was there that it was my birthday, and the next thing I knew, they were all singing "Happy Birthday to You," like a bunch of kids at a party. Somebody even gave me a stale donut that must have been sitting around since early that morning and stuck a lit match in it for me to blow out like it was a candle. It wasn't the best birthday I'd ever had, but it ended up not being too bad. Plus, now I was officially a teenager. In the last couple of weeks at Subchaser School, I spent hours in classrooms and on board learning how to operate sonar to locate U-boats underwater and enemy ships above it. Woody got his crash course in operating, maintaining, and repairing patrol craft engines. They had a simulated ship interior in a warehouse where they drilled us in fighting fires and shoring up bulkheads damaged by torpedo hits or by concussive effects of our own depth charges. They trained us in lifeboat survival, and we spent hours rowing until we thought our arms would fall off, and still kept rowing for hours after that. They tried having us learn cold water survival techniques, but the ocean was too warm, and they couldn't get the pool cold enough no matter how much ice they dumped in. We practiced firing machine guns from our patrol craft at targets towed behind old biplanes out over the ocean. We wanted to make sure we didn't hurt anybody, though a couple of guys aimed a little too close to the planes, and that was the end of their target practice. Woody always came back from his training covered head to toe in grease, which never seemed to come all the way off, no matter how hard he scrubbed in the shower, and no matter how black the tile floor got. I got more and more sunburned from standing and staring through binoculars from the lookout post, what they called the crow's nest, on our patrol craft off Miami Beach. I was scanning the ocean for any sign of one of the U.S. submarines stationed out there for our training exercises. I looked like an owl with white circles around my eyes from having the binoculars pressed there for so long. So far, I was the only one to spot a periscope, though it was in calm water, no waves to cut into visibility. Besides, I knew it was out there somewhere. The biggest challenge you'll face once you're deployed won't be identifying the thing you're looking for, although that'll be a huge challenge too, Lieutenant Foss said. But the biggest challenge will be boredom and fatigue. Hours and hours on your watch, watching, waiting. Your mind will wander. It's just human nature. But you can't let it be your human nature, because you're not vigilant. People could die. It was the same with the sonar, training myself to pay attention the whole time I was on duty. I had never had much patience growing up. Danny was always the patient one. I was the one who jumped out of bed first thing in the morning, racing down to the beach to see what might have washed up overnight. I was the one always getting guys to play baseball after school, or catch and tame the beach ponies, or have races during recess, or go body surfing. Mama said I must have been part dolphin, probably because of what a good swimmer I was and how much I liked to be in the ocean. Probably because I was moving all the time. But now I had to just sit there with the headphones on and listen for the pings of the sonar bouncing off objects underwater, that I couldn't see and learned to tell which ones were schools of fish or sharks or dolphins or ocean junk or boats skimming the surface or coral reefs or submarines, and how deep they were, how fast they were going, and what direction they were going. There was a lot of math involved in the calculations, too. They told us sonar was invented by bats and dolphins, but what they meant was that bats and dolphins did it naturally to find their prey or whatever. Send out these sound waves and then have them come back to them when the waves bounced off something. It was called echolocation, which sounded like a mouthful, but made sense once they explained. I doubted the bats and dolphins had to do the math part, though. Once again, a lot of guys' families came for graduation day ceremonies, but none for Woody or me. Just before things got started, as we were walking from our hotel to the subchaser school, we saw a couple of other sailors holding a newspaper and talking loudly about something in it. "What's the news?" Woody asked. One of the guys stabbed his finger into the picture on the front page. It was a plume of black smoke out of an otherwise cloudless April sky over the ocean. "Right off Jacksonville Beach," the guy said. "People out on the beach with their families, and right there a mile out, U-boats sunk a passenger ship, the USS Gulf America. Everybody saw it, kids and everything. A couple of hours later, bodies washed up on the shore." There's been a lot more ships sunk by U-boats than they're telling people about, his friend added, on account of they don't want people to be too worried. But they couldn't keep this one quiet, not when your kid's playing in the waves and upwashes somebody dead. "Murdered, you mean," said the other guy. Suddenly, I was ready to skip the graduation and get my ship assignment right then and there, give those Nazis what they deserved. "I want to track them down and sink every last one of them," I said fiercely. The two friends nodded. "Of course you better take us with you," one of them said. "Little fellow like yourself ain't going to be able to whip all those U-boats on your own." Woody punched me on the arm. "He might be little, but he's a tough one all right," he said. "Plus, he's got eyes like an eagle. Can you spot a U-boat just thinking about raising a periscope?" The two guys laughed. "Well then, those Nazi U-boats don't sound like they'll be around these parts much longer." I just grinned and we all headed off to graduation. I held on to the newspaper, though, and kept looking at it, looking at that column of smoke rising out of the ocean off Jacksonville Beach, thinking about all those people who saw it and later found the bodies washed up on shore. They would probably know a little bit about how I felt after the U-boat wrecked Danny's boat and put him in a coma, and how I would keep feeling until every last one of those untersea boots was under the water for good. And we'll pick up with chapter 12 tomorrow. Bye, guys.